Brand number 1. Colavita. Colavita presents itself as old-world Italian pasta. The name sounds traditional. The packaging leans hard into heritage. It's sold across the United States in places like Walmart, Whole Foods, Amazon, and specialty grocers. The price usually lands around $2.50 per pound, noticeably higher than most American budget pasta. That price quietly signals quality. Imported, authentic, worth paying extra for. Colavita's story traces back more than 100 years in Italy, originally as an olive oil company. Pasta came later, especially as the American market proved willing to pay for anything wrapped in Italian credibility. And that's where the problem starts, not with safety violations, but with expectations. When you turn the box around in the US, the ingredient list tells a different story. Alongside durum wheat semolina, you'll see niacin, thiamine mononitrate, riboflavin, folic acid, and iron. That's not an accident. That's the exact nutrient profile required under U.S. federal standards for what's legally defined as enriched macaroni products. In plain terms, the grain is refined first, stripped of parts of the kernel, and then rebuilt with synthetic vitamins to meet a nutritional baseline. This matters because traditional Italian pasta doesn't work that way. Classic pasta relies on the integrity of the grain itself. No enrichment step, no reconstruction, just semolina and water. Colavita's U.S. version follows an American industrial model while wearing Italian branding. That's not illegal, but it does cross into misleading territory for consumers who reasonably associate Italian pasta with minimal processing. The risk here isn't poisoning or immediate illness. It's something quieter. Refined grains digest faster. They don't deliver the same satiety signals as intact grain structures. Over time, that can contribute to unstable blood sugar patterns and overeating, especially when pasta is a weekly staple rather than an occasional indulgence. The added vitamins don't fix that. They just make the label look reassuring. Now to brand number 2, where the issue shifts from processing to performance. Brand number 2, Aldi Pasta, U.S. private label. Aldi has built enormous trust in American households by keeping prices low and shelves simple. Their pasta often sells for around $1 per pound, making it a go-to for families cooking multiple meals a week. But over the last 2 years, something changed. The packaging shrank from 16 ounces to 12 ounces, and many products shifted suppliers. Almost immediately, consumer complaints followed. The most common issue isn't taste, it's structure. Farfall, pen, and novelty shapes begin breaking apart before reaching al dente. Even careful cooking can leave you fishing fragments out of boiling water. That's not user error. It points to weaknesses in drying time, semolina quality, or dough formulation. This isn't about danger, it's about reliability. Pasta that can't hold its shape pushes people to compensate more sauce, more salt, more fat to salvage a meal. Over time, those small adjustments add up. Cheap pasta becomes expensive in ways the receipt doesn't show. The pattern is clear. In both cases, the problem isn't what pasta does to you immediately. It's how quietly it reshapes habits when trust replaces scrutiny. And this is just the beginning. I'm moving to brand number 3. Brand number 3, San Giorgio. San Giorgio has been around since the early 1900s. It's an American legacy brand, stocked in mainstream grocery stores across the country. The pricing is low, usually around $0.80 to $1.00 per pound, which places it squarely in the reliable budget staple category for many families. On paper, nothing looks suspicious. Protein sits around 7 grams per serving, carbohydrates around 42 grams. No sodium tricks, no exotic additives, just pasta. Open a box of San Giorgio shells or farfalle, and it's common to find broken pieces already inside. Not chips, not cracks, full fractures. That matters because pasta is supposed to survive shipping, shelving, and basic handling before it ever touches boiling water. When farfalle breaks at the center pinch point, it signals a structural failure. That pinch is under tension by design. If hydration, extrusion pressure, or drying time are off, it snaps. And when it snaps inside sealed packaging, the product was already compromised before it reached your kitchen. This isn't a contamination issue, it's a quality control collapse. Faster drying saves money. Cheaper semolina saves money. Less oversight saves money. The cost shows up in the box. For families relying on San Giorgio as a dependable option, the bargain disappears when half the product is unusable. At under $1 per pound, you're not buying value, you're buying fragments. Now to brand number 4, and this one matters more than the rest combined. Brand number 4, Barilla. Barilla is the most purchased pasta brand in the United States. Estimates consistently place its reach in the tens of millions of households every year. Founded in 1877 in Parma, Italy, Barilla built its reputation on traditional methods, but what most Americans buy today isn't that product. The blue box sold in the U.S. is primarily manufactured in Ames, Iowa, and Avon, New York. It uses Teflon extrusion dies, not bronze. That choice matters. Bronze dies create a rough, matte surface that holds sauce. Teflon creates a smooth, glossy exterior that lets sauce slide off. If you've ever wondered why your pasta looks coated but tastes separate, that's why. The ingredient list adds another layer. U.S. Barilla pasta is made with enriched semolina, meaning refined wheat flour with synthetic vitamins added back to meet federal standards. Again, this is legal, but combined with Italian branding, it creates confusion. Many consumers reasonably assume they're buying something closer to the Italian original. They're not. There have been legal challenges over how Barilla's marketing implies Italian origin despite U.S. manufacturing. Regardless of outcomes, the core issue remains. Familiarity has replaced scrutiny. At roughly $1.75 per pound, Barilla isn't the cheapest option, yet the quality reflects industrial efficiency, not craftsmanship. Smooth pasta encourages heavier sauces. Refined grains digest quickly. Meals become less satisfying, which often leads to larger portions. Over time, that pattern becomes routine. At this point, some people start to say, "Fine, I'll just switch to healthier pasta." That's exactly where brand number 5 enters the conversation, and this is where good intentions collide with reality. I'm talking about brand number 5, Banza. Banza launched in the mid-2010s, riding two powerful trends at once: gluten-free eating and high-protein marketing. The pitch was simple and effective. Instead of wheat, Banza uses chickpeas. Instead of 7 grams of protein per serving, like most traditional pasta, Banza advertises 11 to 12 grams. The ingredient list looks clean at first glance. Chickpeas, pea protein, tapioca starch, xanthan gum. Just 4 ingredients. No wheat, no gluten, no guilt. On paper, it sounds like an upgrade. In the pot, it tells a different story. Chickpeas don't contain gluten. That means there's no natural elastic network to hold the pasta together. To compensate, Banza relies on starches and gums. The result is a product that behaves very differently from wheat pasta. Cooking time is shorter, usually 7 to 9 minutes, but the margin for error is tiny. Go over by 60 seconds and the texture collapses. The water foams aggressively, often boiling over. Even the company acknowledges this, advising constant stirring and close monitoring. Reheating is worse. What starts as edible turns stiff and gummy within hours. For anyone who meal preps, that's not a small inconvenience. It's a deal breaker. At an average price of around $3 per box, Banza asks you to pay more for a product that demands more attention and delivers less flexibility. This isn't about deception in ingredients. Banza is honest about what it is. The issue is expectation. The marketing suggests a one-to-one replacement for pasta. In practice, it's a specialized legume product that requires different technique. For many people, especially those sensitive to legumes, the combination of chickpeas and gums can also lead to bloating and digestive discomfort. Not dangerous, just uncomfortable. And repeated discomfort changes behavior. So if Banza isn't the answer for most households, what is? This is where I introduce the first brand I actually recommend. Brand to consider number 1, Mueller's. Mueller's has been making pasta in the United States since 1867. That's over 150 years of uninterrupted production. In 1999, the brand was acquired by Treehouse Foods, a large food manufacturer. Normally, that's where quality declines. Recipes get optimized, drying times get shortened, ingredients get cheaper. But in this case, something unusual happened. The formula stayed largely the same. Mueller's pasta typically delivers about 8 grams of protein per serving, higher than Barilla's 7 grams because it relies on solid semolina structure rather than ultra-fast industrial processing. It isn't bronze cut, and it doesn't pretend to be artisanal. What it does is hold together. Cook it for 10 minutes, and it stays firm. No foam explosions, no mystery mush. Batch after batch, the texture is consistent. At roughly $1.60 to $1.70 per pound, Mueller's sits in the middle of the price spectrum. That matters. You're not paying for romance or health halos. You're paying for reliability. For families cooking several times a week, that reliability reduces stress, reduces waste, and quietly improves eating habits by removing the need to fix broken meals with extra fat and salt. Banza shows what happens when nutrition marketing runs ahead of functionality. Mueller's proves that boring can be better. And in a kitchen, boring often means dependable. I'll start with brand to consider number 2. Brand to consider number 2, Cecco. Cecco has been family-controlled since 1886. That matters because it explains why the recipe hasn't been flattened by quarterly targets. while many mass brands shorten drying times to as little as 3 to 4 hours. Cecco maintains longer, lower temperature drying designed to protect structure and flavor. The pasta is bronze cut, which creates a visibly rough, matte surface instead of the shiny finish you see on Teflon extruded products. That surface isn't cosmetic. It changes how the pasta behaves. Sauce adheres instead of pooling. Oil integrates instead of sliding off. Cook time typically lands around 9 to 10 minutes, producing a firm, elastic bite that resists turning mushy even if you're slightly distracted. Ingredient lists are short durum wheat, semolina, and water for many SKUs with no requirement for reconstruction through vitamin enrichment in the traditional Italian model. Price-wise, Cecco usually comes in around $2.75 to $3.25 per pound in U.S. stores. That places it above industrial pasta, but well below boutique imports. You're paying for process, not marketing. The health benefit isn't a nutrient claim, it's behavioral. Pasta that holds sauce well encourages simpler preparations and smaller portions. You eat slower, you stop sooner. That's not a theory, it's how texture influences intake. Now to brand to consider number 3, and this one shifts the story from tradition to intention. Brand to consider number 3, Sfoglini. Sfoglini is an American craft pasta company that chose a different path from the start. While most industrial producers chase efficiency, Sfoglini commits to slow drying for 9 hours or more, often at lower temperatures. That's more than double the time used by many mainstream manufacturers. The pasta is bronze extruded, intentionally rough, and made in smaller batches where consistency is controlled, not assumed. Sfoglini also became known for collaborating on pasta design, including specialty shapes engineered to capture sauce through surface area and curvature rather than slickness. The result is pasta with a denser chew and more pronounced grain flavor. Some people prefer softer textures. Others recognize this as what pasta tasted like before speed became the priority. Pricing reflects the method. Sfoglini typically sells for around $5.50 to $6 per pound. That's not everyday pasta for most households, and it's not pretending to be. The value here is transparency. You know where the time went, you know why it costs more, and you can taste the difference that slower drying makes. Taken together, Cecco and Sfoglini show what happens when pasta is treated as food, not filler. One proves that traditional methods can still be affordable. The other proves that American craft doesn't need to imitate Italy, it just needs to respect time. And that brings us to the final question. If pasta itself isn't the problem, what is? By now, the pattern should feel uncomfortably clear. Pasta itself was never the enemy. The problem was the story we were sold about it. Safety by default, tradition by association, health by implication. None of those things are guaranteed just because food looks simple, but familiarity isn't the same as integrity. Colavita showed how easy it is to dress refined grain in heritage and let consumers fill in the rest. Aldi and San Giorgio showed what happens when cost-cutting reaches the point where food can't even perform its basic function. Barilla demonstrated how scale and repetition can replace scrutiny entirely. And Banza reminded us that even well-intended health upgrades can backfire when functionality is sacrificed for numbers on the front of a box. The brands worth keeping don't promise miracles. Mueller's doesn't pretend to be romantic. It just works. Cecco doesn't chase trends. It respects time-tested structure. Sfoglini doesn't try to be cheap or convenient. It's honest about what care and patience cost. In different ways, they all arrive at the same place. Food that behaves predictably, tastes complete without disguise, and doesn't ask you to compensate for its flaws. That's the real shift. Not restriction, not fear, awareness. You don't need to purge your pantry tonight. You don't need to memorize regulations or become a food expert. You just need to slow down long enough to look past the front of the box, to notice when a product relies more on identity than substance, to recognize when safe has become a shortcut word instead of a standard. Pasta can still be a comfort food, a family food, a weekly ritual. It just shouldn't be a blind one. If this breakdown helped you see something you hadn't noticed before, share it with someone who still buys pasta on autopilot. Hit like if you believe everyday food deserves the same honesty as anything labeled healthy. And stay here. There are a lot more quiet labels worth reading and a lot more habits worth rethinking. If this video helped you look at something familiar with clearer eyes, take a second to support the work. Hitting like may seem small, but it tells the algorithm that careful, honest conversations about everyday foods still matter. And if you know someone who buys pasta on autopilot because most of us do share this with them, not to scare them, just to help them see what's really on the shelf. The more people who understand their food, the harder it becomes for marketing to speak louder than truth.